Is ANC's resolution on land expropriation without compensation feasible? What are the immediate challenges facing the African National Congress's newly elected president? Is the incoming top six likely to rally behind President Cyril Ramaphosa as a collective? What can be made of the new 80 National Executive Committee members? What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Bongi Kwala, standing in for Mpotsedu. The ANC's resolution on land expropriation without compensation has been hailed as a radical move by an overwhelming majority of the party delegates at its 54th National Conference that concluded last night. However, opposition parties say it is not sustainable and is a populist rhetoric. How feasible is this policy? Will the newly elected ANC NEC have the appetite to press ahead with this resolution, or will they be guided by the markets and economic reaction? Well, tonight we look at this and other resolutions taken by the ANC at its conference, including the nationalisation of the Reserve Bank, unity and legalization of sex workers. We are live, therefore you can call us and air your views. The number is 0891 104 210. If you're outside of South Africa, you can then add +27 891 104 210 or tweet us your comments. Our Twitter handle is at QuestionTime24. Well, my guest is ANC Veterans League President Mr. Snuki Zikalala, who is here with me, and we will try and engage on this issue. Mr. Zikalala, good to have you with us.
Yeah, good evening.
All right, so let's start with the burning issue, the issue of land. Of course, it was adopted, and that's what the ANC is going to do. Is it feasible? That's the question.
Well, I think it is feasible. It was debated for, I think, for more than 30 minutes within the conference itself, because initially it was debated at the policy conference. And so now it came to the conference, elective conference now, and I think delegates were quite edgy that there's no resolution on this issue. And I think a compromise was reached that there will be land expropriation, but it has to follow due process and should not affect the economy, number one. Number two, it should not affect agricultural production. Number three, it must make sure that it is not done haphazardly. Yeah. As you know, that we're a constitutional democracy, all those processes have to go through parliament. And so I think it is feasible as long as it does not disturb the economy and it does not affect the agricultural production.
What are the timelines?
Well, the timelines, it can take about 6 months to a year. Who knows? As you know, the parliamentary process takes long because everything has to be legislated, because we're a country that respects our constitution, that makes sure that every citizen has a right to say yeah or nay. There can be an ANC policy, but it will take time for it to be implemented.
So who will be the beneficiaries? Because this process has started, well, not without compensation, but it has started. But what we have observed over a period of time is that those people who have had land returned to them, most of them have not utilized the land. It's lying idle there. It's not being utilized. No,
it's true. It's true. That's what we discuss as veterans, saying that if you appropriate land, you don't compensate it. But will people be able to till that land? Because farming is not easy. Farming it's intensive work. You need skills, you need expertise, and you need people who have knowledge of how to farm. If you give back farms to our black people who have been disadvantaged in terms of skills, in terms of knowledge, without giving them proper education and training in that field, definitely it will be useless. And so what is important is that should, especially when you're going to expropriate land, you must make sure that you put those mechanisms in place, because as you say, that most of the land that has been given back to our communities who have claimed that land is lying fallow currently, and people just went and got money and were happy to go back to townships. But now they have to be encouraged that, look, without land and without food security, you cannot survive as a country.
And opposition parties are saying that this is a dangerous and reckless rhetoric.
Well, I don't think it's rhetoric. I don't think it's dangerous. I think ANC is a very responsible organization. very responsible, and I don't think the ANC will play with people's minds and people's emotions. I think the whole process will be taken through society properly, so that society must know that this is not propaganda, but we are serious with what we are saying.
What will be the guiding principles then in implementing this when it becomes policy?
Well, it is policy now that there should be land appropriation without compensation. But of course, one of the basic things that it should not destabilize the economy. It should not destabilize food security. It should not destabilize agricultural production. And so all those guidelines will be set by the Minister of Land and Reform. And the Minister of Land and Reform will be able to set the guidelines, and all that process will have to go through Parliament properly. And it has to be debated in Parliament, and then it has to be legislated.
The reason why we spending so much time on this particular issue, because there are so many other resolutions, is because it's a thorny issue and it needs to be treated with dignity and with extra care as well. Over the past 20 years, the issue of land and the ANC has been navigating this issue. I mean, some of the policies and some of the approaches have failed. I mean, willing buyer, willing seller has failed completely. So how are you going to make sure this time around that this does not fail and it's done properly? We are in a space where food is a threat right now. So and we know what happened in Zimbabwe, for instance, with that particular policy. So why are we then implementing it at this time when it's failed elsewhere, just across the Limpopo?
Well, those are demands of the branches. This is what the branches have been demanding. And so the debate that we had for more than 30 minutes, the delegates were saying our branches have said you must come here, and we came in during the policy conference, and we want land we want expropriation land without paying. And so what are we doing about it? And so it was a lengthy and heated debate at the conference. And finally, the compromise was reached that fine, we agree with you, but we have to set time frames. It has to be done properly. It should not affect security of productivity. And all those issues have to be looked at. And it has to be implemented properly. But those are demands from the branches, because ANC is run by what the society needs. If the society say, I want my organization to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for me.
Are you going to do a national survey of some sort? Because we're talking about 4,000 delegates who were at the conference. They, some would say they don't represent me from where I sit. So are you going to make sure that perhaps there's even referendum insofar as that issue is concerned?
Well, I don't know. Well, the ANC itself, the National Executive Committee, has not sat down to say exactly how is it going to be conducted. But as you know, the question of land, it's one of the most important things in society. It's an emotive issue in society. Society says that this land of ours is taken to us without compensation. We are colonized. They came in and took our land. They pushed out of the land that is very rich, and so we want our land back. But fine, we'll give you land back, but is the society going to be able to till that land? And so what it means that the ANC has to put in a program that will ensure that if that happens, it should not happen haphazardly, it must be orderly, and it must be legislated.
All right, let's move on to other issues. The issue of nationalizing the Reserve Bank. How feasible is that?
Well, it's a policy that's adopted by the conference, but I think it will take time for the ANC to implement it. To be honest with you, it's important that the Reserve Bank should be stable. You don't have to shake the markets, and so those are the things that the National Executive Committee have to sit down and say, how are we going to implement this? And of course, they have to come back after 6 months or 7 months and say, is it possible or not? If it's not possible, definitely they have to go back to society and say, we don't think it's feasible now to nationalize the Reserve Bank.
And you are saying that so that the markets are not shaken, but this resolution was put forward and adopted by mostly people who are not economists, people who are not in the economy, people who are not in finance, and that's a financial institution. So how safe then is it for them to simply suggest that it must be nationalized and make noise about it and even come to blows, some of them, and yet they have not gone deep to understand what the Reserve Bank does in the economy of a country?
Yeah, well, I think before that happens, I think the ANC will go through what you call education and training of our people to say, if the bank gets nationalized, what does it mean? And so exactly how is it going to shake the markets? because we're a capitalist country. We are not a socialist country. We know that socialist countries, banks have collapsed, and so we don't want that to happen to South Africa. And so it means that education has to go through our people to understand exactly what nationalization of the bank means. And so at the ANC itself, we have to make sure that we take our people through the whole process of understanding why, if we nationalize, what repercussions are there? If we don't nationalize, what is going to happen? And so that we take society on board with us.
Romano, you are in Eden Park. Hello.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
I would just like to respond to say the following. This is just a populist election campaign of the ANC for the 2019 election. Because clearly the ANC does not have a plan how to address the land question, because they are being restricted by the secret deals by the current president, Mr. Ramaphosa, and some of the other secret deals that Mr. Mandela had during the negotiations. So CODESA has only rubber stamped what was agreed upon. So therefore for the ANC, I think they're just trying to counter the same rhetoric of the EFF about the land question, because it is the same ANC which has agreed that a land to adopt the 1913 Land Act. Now, the 1913 Land Act, the majority of the African people, 87% were already owning 13% land, and 13% of the white minority were owning 87% land. So therefore, the ANC will never be able to address the land question. They're just misleading the nation. And that's all. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Romano in Eden Park. So there again, you're trying to match the EFF because they've been vocal about this particular issue. Perhaps let's clarify this. The issue of expropriation of land without compensation, did it start with the EFF or has it always been there? It's just that the ANC has not been as vocal about it.
Well, I think it started with the ANC, and so the EFF jumped onto the bandwagon. And so now we see that it has been dealt haphazardly. And so that is why it's important that we should come up with a process of how it can be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move on to other issues. I mean, you read a headline that says Cyril Ramaphosa fails to master a majority in the NEC. Has it gotten to that point where it's about numbers? Yes, politics is a numbers game, but can the ANC afford at this time, when it's so fragmented, when it's besieged by all sorts of issues, to be looking at the NEC and saying, no, we won the day today because Cyril Ramaphosa didn't get the majority?
Well, it's not the winner takes all.
Yeah.
Let me be honest with you. I think what Cyril has now, he has a very strong top six, and of course with different views. But what is important is that the ANC came out of this elective conference very united, very strong, and also looking at how can we persuade society to give us another chance to govern on their behalf, because that's what is important. We don't govern on our own behalf, but we govern on behalf of society. Now, the conference itself, majority of a number of people are saying that this conference is not going to take place. It will be disrupted, it will be violent, but we came out united, strong, and we're looking forward to 2018, and of course making sure that throughout the whole of 2018 we deal with issues of unemployment, we deal severely with question of corruption, so that especially no one is above the law. Whoever has put his hand in a cookie jar must be able to account. And Cyril made it very clear, our president made it very clear that he's not going to compromise on that, and he's going to make sure that the state-owned enterprises are run professionally by skilled, competent and dedicated bureaucrats, not only members of the ANC, but bureaucrats who are South African citizens who can make sure that those state entities really prosper and they make profit and they serve the interests of society.
Itumeleng, you on the line from Pretoria. Hello.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
I want to ask about the issue of the Khoisan, as we are talking about land. Because the Khoisans are busy, saying the ANC should recognize them as the first people who owned the land. And then I want to say to Mr. Snuki Zikalala, I feel very sad for people like him to experience what is happening in the ANC, because people like him, they know how the ANC should work. I looking at him right now, I feel very sad for them, because I respect him and then the people who were in his time. Because if you look at that list of 8 people who the the NEC. You know, I feel sorry for the ANC because you can see that the ANC will lose 2019. And the issue of land, the ANC, that is just a populist rhetoric. They just want something to campaign for elections. Thank you very much.
Itumeleng, thank you very much. I really struggled to hear
what you're saying.
Okay, he said something about the Khoisan, which I think it's an important discussion as well. Itumeleng, apologies, we couldn't make out what you were saying. I was engaging with one delegate who was on the side of NDZ. And,
what do you mean on the side of NDZ?
Well, they were supporting Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma going to the
that delegate is a committed ANC member.
Yes, he is.
That's what is important.
Now he says to me, we won the day because all the resolutions that were taken there are the resolutions, are the policies that Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma has been pushing. Has it come down to that who put what policy on the table? They talk about the issue of land, they talk about the issue of education, for instance, they talk about all sorts of issues that were there, that were adopted, the issue of transformation, all the issues that were discussed. They're saying these are the issues that have been pushed by Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and therefore we won the day. I'm looking at if the unity in the ANC exists, or it exists on paper really only, but deep down members and delegates know that the cracks are just too wide.
No, the ANC has policies, and the policies are defined in ANC documents. Comrade Nkosazana Zuma does not have her own economic policies at all. So it's settled. Policies adopted at conference after thorough research by ANC people. ANC has got best policies in the entire world. The biggest problem that we have as ANC is question of implementation. Comrade Nkosazana Zuma does not have her own policies. Neither is Cyril. All of us ascribe to ANC values and principles.
But were they pushing the same vision? Were they pushing the same policies?
Of course, you go to branches, it's the same thing. Discuss the same policy documents. There's no document that says this is Comrade Nkosazana's document, this is Cyril's document. There's nothing like that.
Okay. Patrick, you're on the line. Hello.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Go ahead.
First, I want to greet my leader, the Comrade Snuki. How are you, Comrade?
Fine, thanks, and you?
I'm okay. Thank you for the immense contribution that you have made previously. I think there is a misunderstanding of issues around ANC policy on land without compensation. The policy has been there. Let me clarify first of all. The policy on land was there. Remember, the minister that we have now have made so many initiatives where some of the white people who were owning the land were actually partnering with the people who were owning the land, so that the results are okay. Let's not misunderstand the two issues. There is one issue that says it seems now as if ANC is starting now to attend into the problem of land. It is not. The policy is there. It's just that it will be a little amendment because there was compensation. Remember when restitution was started, comrades, when restitution was started, you will recall that most farms in Mpumalanga were taken back to the owners. But guess what? Because of, as I'm following your discussion there, all what happened in Mpumalanga, land was given back to the owners without any training. And what happened? Some of these farms were producing meal and other stuff. But immediately after they transferred it, and the money that is spent, we are talking of billions now, that the money that they've spent to take this land back to people, to the claimant. The ANC has been forever, let's not misunderstand it, because EFF and others are claiming they want to claim victory. It is the ANC, you can recall, around South Africa, it was the ANC who was spearheading the progress of taking land to people.
Okay, Patrick.
But the policy...
I think you've made your point. We get you. Thank you very much. Patrick, talking about the issue that we touched on, that land is lying fallow and it's not being tilled. So now the issue of training then is an important question. Let's look at the other issues, the issue of corruption. I mean, the president of the ANC was very clear that it has to come to a stop.
Yes.
So what needs to happen immediately?
Well, I think what needs to happen immediately is that those who are implicated, they have to face the music, irrespective of who you are. And so, because society wants to see action being taken against people who are corrupt. At one of the commissions that I attended, that is organizational renewal, of course, COCTA was there, and we raised the issue that there's something like 18 billion rand that was fruitless expenditure. And then we said, but no one has been arrested. And so how can society have confidence in us? And you find that especially in rural areas, people don't have water, sanitation is not there, and there's mass unemployment. And we said, but the society wants to see those implicated in corruption dealt with severely. And so that's what Cyril is saying.
Yeah, but Mr. Zikalala, why don't you have at least... Why don't we have, as a country, people suspended? I mean, the issue of ESCOM, the issue of the minister who is there. I mean, the president himself is you know, we know the issues around that. I mean, the court has ruled that he cannot appoint the DPP and so on and so on. We know all the issues. Why is the ANC not saying, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, just stand aside, let's deal with this issue?
Well, before I used to criticize the NEC, the National Executive Committee, and saying that it's the one that is not, because the National Executive Committee is the highest body after conference. But when you go there into the NEC, you can see that the NEC itself was unable to take a decision on a number of issues. And the Integrity Committee says that they had 22 cases, only 3 of them were not properly dealt with. And it's up to the ANC, the composition of members of the ANC. It should be people who are not employed by government. That is why we as veterans were saying 60% of those who are employed by the NEC should not be composed of 80% of people employed by the state, because the question of patronage. And so people will be afraid to say to the president that, look, this must stop right now. You can't do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's unacceptable, because they're employed by the president. And so the NEC itself was not really, was divided on those issues. That is why they reached a consensus that this cannot be done. But now with the new leadership, new NEC that is there, and the new leadership that has emerged, I think all these issues are going to be dealt thoroughly. There's no question of paging anybody, there's no question of intimidation.
Right.
The only thing that is going to be dealt with is that, did you mess up state-owned entities? Did you have your fingers in the cookie jar or not?
The issue of recalling the president has been out there, and at some point we were told that it was going to be discussed in some of the commissions there. It didn't happen. So what is going to happen now?
Well, the issue of recalling the president, it was discussed at one NEC, but it could not reach consensus, because the NEC has got 80 people. It's too big. And so the NEC was divided. What
are the wishes of the Veterans League?
Well, the Veterans League is that, well, the president is gone now. We can't talk about him. He's the president of the country, of the ANC. The next coming NEC must discuss those issues. We have been saying that if the president, the allegations against the former president of the ANC of corruption, of mismanagement, if there are those allegations, the NEC must take a decision and say, Haibo, President, you have violated our constitution. You cannot hold this senior position currently. That's what the NEC should have done.
Are you going to offer him a card now to be a member of the Veterans League now that he's no longer the president?
Unfortunately, you don't just give a person a card.
Yeah.
To become a member of the Veterans League, you have to apply.
Okay.
And when you apply, you have to tell us exactly, give us a biography. When did you join the ANC? With whom did you work? Which underground unit do you come from? And you must give us biographies, and your reference must be of people who are still alive. And then from there, we look at that, you contact those people, we ask them, is it true you know this comrade? Yes, I know him. Is it true? Can you write an affidavit to confirm that you trained him, he was with you in the underground structures? Yes. And then from there, once you're satisfied with the application, we sign it and then become a member.
Okay.
And then from there, you just don't come and assume a position. there's conference that takes place. And so the president is most welcome to become a member of the Veterans League, and then we will, of course, embrace him.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Mr. Snuki Zikalala, thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much.
And that's where we're going to have to leave it for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Question Time returns on Monday. Good night.